a vision or purpose, but not necessarily putting together some type of plan where there's certain benchmarks or other things that people aren't creating campaigns for. And I think because a lot of times what happens is they're just making the game and focus on making the game, and then when the game's complete, it's like, okay, now it's time to market. And there's other factors and reasoning too, where it could be just overwhelming, and obviously you just want to make the game. But I think that's also oftentimes a trap that developers sometimes get into, and understandably so. But it's good to be mindful of that. So I would say like a solution is really to just come forward and start creating a marketing plan, and also and to start. At least marketing when you have something, because that's always a big question too. We see people have is like, well, when do I start, right? And so the best way is to when you have something. What something means is like if any type of imagery, music, screenshots, whatever it may be, that's a good point where you can
even
start.
A workspace that you can record people working in.
Yeah, like
anything you have.
Like it obviously the opportunities are endless when it comes to finding something to say something about. I mean, even I love it, even though some people might not feel the same. But like when they're like, "Oh, look, my cat is on my keyboard messing things up," like that's something. It might not be what you ultimately want to focus on for the rest of your development and up to launch, but it is something, and it can be engaging and things like that. And as far as creating a marketing plan, that could sound a little scary sometimes, and probably because it's like, well, how do I put one together? Well, that's also why we put together that marketing template that's available for free. But it goes through that process as far as like really thinking out, basically like what we already said with defining your vision and purpose with a mission script. But it puts things out. So then next, when you come around to that, you have a plan, or at least to some degree, like a process in which you can kind of start following or flesh out. And it's always going to change. It's never going to be just whatever you use. It's not set in stone or anything. So having that will also keep you more prepared for when you do get to that decision of working with other partners and such, and just keep you in line. And so it's one less thing you have to worry about later. Like, oh, and then you can like focus on development more, because then you're just like, I know I already fleshed this out. I know I'm going to make some changes, but now it's like one less thing in the back of my mind, taking up less mental bandwidth that I have to worry about, so I can then devote more attention to my game.
Yeah, well said. I would agree completely.
And one other couple things that I want to focus on that too is like as far as examples, like, hey, what do I put in my plan, right? Just incorporating other things such as like the market understanding, audience research, localization. That's like a big one I think a lot of people don't think about, because a lot of times it comes down to the developers like, oh, well, we see this market and this market being possibility. But what happens is now there's a lot of extra work that needs to be done on the publisher side, which, that's what they do, right? But if you have an understanding and knowing of that information already of where your game is going to perform well in different markets outside of your, whatever the native, the main languages of the game, it's just going to give you more leg up compared to other indie devs looking for opportunity or looking for publishers or other representation. And you already have that a lot of the framework set up. So if you're working with someone else and that's done, that's less that they have to do and more energy and effort they could put into other areas of that marketing or other tasks and projects at hand. So and what we talked about there too is, and I want to go into this a little bit more, is not knowing your audience. So Mustapha, what do you think are some of the things when it comes to not knowing your audience that a lot of devs kind of like may focus on more in terms of things that they really shouldn't be focusing on?
Right. Well, I think it's funny. I think this kind of ties into the next subject we're going to get into after this one too, which is like not building a community. And so I do just want to kind of like tie these two together because I think there's such an important link here.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's about the engagement. So I think a lot of the time developers will approach a game, maybe based on details like genres or like cop titles, like things that are out and doing well and similar, and they'll think that they automatically have an audience, which is just not true. If you come out with a card game today, you are not going to take the audience away from Hearthstone or Magic. Like, that's not how that works.
Nice, but that'd just be too easy.
Yeah, right. I mean, if it were that easy, it would just be a new most popular game in a genre every year. So I think what a lot of independent developers kind of have as both their advantage and their challenge is taking ideas of genres and flipping them on their heads, such as to appeal to people who are maybe interested in that, but also people who are interested in perhaps the more targeted or more focused niche. And the way that you kind of get a better understanding of that is through the building of your community, which you develop by already marketing. So as you can see, it's all connected. So, the sooner you have an idea of what you're building, the sooner you should be starting to work to see who would be interested in that. And once you've started to find people who are interested in that, offering them a space to be able to engage and interact with one another allows you to get a better sense of the types of people that they are, their interests, the things that draw them to the game you're making, which then allows you to target people who you feel are similar to those who have already been receiving it well. So it's all kind of an interconnected tapestry. And the solution is not just make the game and sometimes post videos of the game. It is active research. It is gathering data, the people who are engaging with you, if you can find information about age, demographics, regional differences, all sorts of things that might influence who's interested in your game. So those types of things, they're all essential to getting to know your audience and to building a community, and subsequently to actually getting your game in people's hands.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And there's like in a lot of kind of to piggyback off of that a little bit too, because what you said about like building a community and getting to really know your people too, because I think another mistake that sometimes devs make is, their target audience is really just based off of people's interest with similar genres or other related titles alone. And it's not a bad thing that they're doing that, but it also doesn't go into the aspect that you just mentioned about like on the community front and really knowing what people want. I mean, there's a lot of different things that people can do, and I think tying into the community aspect, really knowing your community, understanding what they like and don't like and other things is probably one of the best ways to get that, because other ways of going about it is just doing further research and getting to know more about your audience. One thing that a lot of just like marketing agencies as a whole will do will be creating like marketing personas or buyer personas and things along that line. And what those are in particular are getting really into the nit and gritty and really find details of what your audience is and kind of encompassing it into a particular person, right? And so what that is specifically is like, how do you define, like you basically are creating a person, right? That encompasses your entire audience. Another name for this is like creating an avatar. And you can get down beyond demographics and all that other stuff is like, what do they do for work? What are the magazines they read, the restaurants they go to, and all those other things too. Those are all really important factors to getting a better sense of who your audience is and how you can communicate with them and stuff. But as Mustapha was saying, and why this ties in so much with their community, because as you start building it and everything, like you can create this list, and sometimes it can be really challenging and a lot of extra work to really figure out like, how do I boil my my audience down into a person? But the next best way to do that is with the community building, is with talking to them and really fully understanding. Because even if you're not able to boil it down into a particular person or persona in this case, then at least you do have a very good sense and understanding of who the people you are talking to, who are the people that are really resonating with your game and the messaging and everything else. And that's how you're able to do other things. Because a lot of times, too, with the community sense, I think devs don't necessarily know, where to start and are sometimes too passive because, they might be just modest, really, and understandably so. It's like promotion in itself, I think, can be hard for some people because it's like it's about me, but it's not about you. If you think about it, you're creating this game for yourself, but you're also creating it for others to play. So it's not about you. It's about other people, and you want to share this awesome experience you're creating with other people. So don't be afraid and don't be too passive with it. And like you were saying, too, with the engagement aspect, Mustapha, and all those other things, like the best solution to when it comes to building your community is, to building and keeping your community's attention. And everything we just talked about, from knowing your audience and really understanding, are going to help build that solution, which is, keeping your community's attention. And there's different ways to do that. I mean, obviously you can post on Twitter or post everywhere else and stuff, but having an email list, it's surprising how many people don't do that still. And also can gravitate towards other things that are, key objectives and stuff. But when you create something like for example, a mailing list, you have kind of a direct line. Now, people don't read their email all the time, but you do a lot better than a lot of other channels have a direct line with individuals. So when they sign up for that and you build that up, now you are able to engage with them more often, keep their attention, and knowing what to say from how you understand your audience and everything else is going to generate that attention and the ability for them to share it with others. So a lot of stuff we talked about there in terms of knowing your audience and, building a community. So moving right along into some different areas, one I thought is kind of interesting, too, where sometimes, we have people that are maybe not necessarily trying new things. So what would you say is kind of the problem there, or, what some devs may do in terms of not trying new things?
Right. Well, I think that kind of gets into back to the subject of knowing your audience. I think kind of perpetual goal of any business is to continue to expand your audience. So you want to, of course, maintain the appeal of those who are already loyal and buying your products, but I think also knowing that there are other audiences out there that you could be tapping into is one of the benefits of being a little bit more adventurous with what you do. And quite frankly, if you have fans who maybe are starting to get bored with repetition and things like that, subverting their expectations is a way to reignite their interest as well. So, that's the importance of really being open-minded. That's the key, I think, especially, for the millionth time, we'll say, as saturated as indie games are, you absolutely have to be doing things that are maintaining people's attention. Because if what you're doing is status quo, there are probably 100 or so other people also doing status quo in your genre. So, so that's really where I think, kind of just doing what makes you comfortable isn't always going to be effective. The industry's changed, and the need to do things in a unique and creative way, I think, is more important now than it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of that, too, which can be difficult, is, the fear of failing. Because anytime you're trying something new, there's probably a good chance that you're going to fail at it, whatever it might be. And, yes, that's the blatant truth, and sometimes can be scary, but I think it's important to go in with that type of expectation and set it. Because just because you fail at something doesn't mean you can't, learn from it. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway that people don't necessarily think about or set those expectations for. They focus more on the fear opposed to the learning experience. Because with anything, the more you learn, the better you're going to get at what you do. I mean, it's just a given. I know a lot of people listening can definitely relate